Hi, I'm Dave Does, and you are watching the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel. On today's video, I'm going to be talking about why is the live music scene dying? Now, there are going to be many of you that will be already clicking into the comment section saying, hang on, the live music scene in my area is amazing, it is buzzing, so many great bands out there. And I'm here to tell you, yes, there are amazing bands out there. That could be some of the problems. We come across so many great bands here on the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel, far more than I even knew existed until we started doing live music promotion, and sort of got inundated with the sheer number of bands that are contacting us about playing shows. And there is a real thirst from bands that want to get out there, they want to put their music out to some great crowds, they want to play to some people that are really inspired to come out and watch live music. The challenge is, those crowds are not always there. Now some can put that down and say, hey, no, you're just blaming your crowds, and just because people don't come to your events. It's not just our events. We've had some great crowds at our events, and we've had some really poor attended events as well. And I know it's not just A.D.K. So, I want to talk about what we've seen and what we think is going on. So, the music industry as a whole is actually very, very strong, but the live scene in certain elements, specifically grassroots music scene, is in a really bad place, particularly for venue owners and for promoters, and of course the bands themselves are not doing well within this scene. I want to touch base on a few of those things and some of the figures that just to help you understand what's going on. The main challenge we have within the industry and within music, as I see it, is that it's the cost of living. Now, the cost of living has gone up astronomically over the years, and unfortunately, people's pay has not gone up to meet that. And I'm going to come through some figures just to give you an idea of where we sit in a little bit. But this fundamentally has a massive impact on venues, because whereas 30 years ago, and I'm going to use 1995 as a reference point, as I was out gigging and watching bands myself, I could go out every single weekend. I was working, I was earning money, I was paying bills, and I had an expendable income, which meant that I could go out of a night, £30 in my pocket, I could go watch a band, I could have a load of drinks with friends, get a cab home, whatever, and still have some change left over. Nowadays, £30 is not going to get you very, very far, and that's a big problem because our expendable income has not gone up to match what we need. So our expendable income is just a big problem. Price of tickets for our larger events now, because this is a huge problem for us, because obviously these bands are out there and they've got to keep touring, because bands are now touring more than they ever did. You go back 30 years, bands would go out on a tour, even smaller bands would go out and do touring events, and generally though what you would find is that your big bands would come out every so often. You'd have the big festivals, and then you'd have maybe 5-6 festivals, but generally then you'd just have your local bands, and that's where you would go to find out new music. Now what we're finding is that big source of revenue that bands had, which was music, i.e. CD revenue, is no longer there. They don't have that. Yes, they get a little bit of money dripped through from streaming platforms, but generally, unless you're a massive artist, you're the Metallicas of the world, for instance, that's not going to make a massive difference. And even then, they still do well on CD sales. With that in mind, we've got these established acts that are now staying out on the road for much, much longer, constantly touring, and their ticket prices are still quite high. Especially for the most established acts, they are still quite high. Whereas if you start to go down the tiers, I suppose, of the bands, it's not too bad in comparison to inflation. But it does mean that little bit of expendable income that band or people who want to go and watch music have is getting sucked up into those big bands. And you can't blame the big bands for that. They've got to make a living as well. But it does mean that there's less money for people to go out and spend to go and watch smaller artists. We've got to talk about drink prices. Drink prices are ridiculous. It costs so much to go out. We can talk about that in a bit more detail. We have so many bands nowadays. The ease of which it is to be able to get started in a band, because you've got the internet, you can share ideas with people, you can connect. It used to be back in the day, to form a band, you'd have to. For us, it used to be this newspaper. I think it was called the Loot paper, locally here in the UK, and you get it, and there'd be a musicians classifieds ads, and you'd phone up. You'd go and do like a tryout, stuff like that, and that's how you kind of form. You like-minded musicians, you'd find it through a newspaper ad. And you'd form your band, you'd go out there and you'd get started, and you'd try and get a few gigs if you were lucky. But now it's a case of you have so much opportunity with home recording to get demos out there, to get all these other things you can go out and do. So there are those elements that means there are so many great bands, and they are phenomenal bands out there. I don't even have time to listen to all the content that we get sent. So it's just saturation, so much band. So everyone wants to get out, everyone wants to gig. We're in so many rock and metal groups here on the social media platforms that I get every day. Just like my feed is like gig, releases, CDs. It's insane. There's so many bands out there, which means we're all fighting for that same small amount of people that have got a bit of expendable income to come to our shows. The challenge, another thing that we've got at the moment, is it's a multifaceted industry now for bands. Bands have got to do so much work to get noticed. You can't just be a band and put out good music. You've got to be able to do comedic skits on reels to somehow promote your show to try and gain interest. You literally got to be a comedian now to actually get anything done in a way, because you've got to keep people's interest on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram. You've got to run all of these different industries. You've got to be putting content out, and not even musical content. You've got to just be putting out socially aware content that people like. Huge challenge for it. Bands have got cost elements. Bands basically nowadays play gigs for free. In your local scene, they are playing for free because venues, promoters generally don't earn any money to be able to pay them unless you can sell out a venue. Many will do what we do, which is allow bands to sell the tickets themselves and keep the money, so the promoter loses out, or they do it as a percentage split with the band. One part of the industry that is doing very well is, unfortunately, we've got the elements of, you've got management companies, which are great. They do a good job for the bands. They get them onto festival bills, etc., and get them more established. We have PR services, which you really do need nowadays. You can't just put out a release and hope that someone's going to find it, because you've got this massive jungle of stuff that you've got to get past to try and get your content in front of people. So you have to pay for PR. But we also have the companies that go on about things like gain more Spotify listeners. We can gain you 80,000 Spotify listeners. Just pay us $29.99 a month and we will gain you and get you on these playlists. And unfortunately, if you just want to put your music out and put it on Spotify or Deezer or whatever the streaming platform you want to use and hope that someone's going to find it, it really isn't going to be there. You need to have a social presence for people to find your content in the first place. So in the early stages, people will just try anything, and generally what you're going to get is a little spike in listens, and then that drops off because basically you have bot listeners or whatever it might be. So you've got major issues there, but those industries are still making decent money, and of course anything like AI generation. But there are a lot of industry parts on top of the live music scene, of the live bands. We've got photographers are really struggling. It used to be you'd get a couple of good photographers at a live venue that bands would then kind of love what they got from live shots and would hire them to do band promo releases. But nowadays everyone's got high-end camera phones and they've got a mate who's got a camera, and to be honest, it just absolutely kills photography off. And same with videography. You can shoot your own music videos nowadays. We do in our band. I've done it and I do it for other bands as well. But generally, there's a lot of videographers here that are really struggling to make ends meet, because even they've got into the industry because it's easier to get into the industry, but you can't maintain yourself in the industry. So we've got those areas. Now there are some solutions to what we can do, and I still have said I'm going to come to the figures. I'm going to come to the figures just to give you where my thoughts are on this. One of the biggest things I think we could try and do is we need to encourage people to go out the house. It's far too easy, and we've got very complacent since COVID, where we all had to stay at home, that we all realised that we could actually enjoy our houses when we spend our money. We pay our mortgages, we pay our rents, etc. So why not enjoy a house? We pay our subscription fees to Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever it might be that you're doing to get all your movies and stuff. So why leave the house? And actually I can get a case of beer for £10 or whatever it is in dollars or euros, and we can get that case of beer and I can sit there and have them nice and cold in my fridge, and that case of beer is the same as I get 10 cans, and that would be the equivalent of 2 cans in a pub. So why would I go to a pub when I can't enjoy myself? So we need to reverse that. We need to put pressure on governments to turn around and say, Supermarkets. Off licenses. I mean, off licenses are going to be a challenge, but supermarkets, but probably for your consumables, things like lagers, ciders, stouts, etc. We need to make the sale of the supermarkets doing these big bulk stacks and stuff, make it really hard for them. Where they could sell it for 10 quid, make it sell it for £30. Put the taxes on them, put the duties on them much higher to make that become a much smaller part of that business. Now that is going to impact supermarkets, but supermarkets can always diversify. They can focus on other elements of the business. They don't make a lot of money on alcohol. They're relying on you to come through the door to buy your alcohol, and then they hit you with markups on other areas. I know that. I've worked in the supermarket industry. I know what the profit margin is on alcohol, and it is negligible. Very, very, very little profit is made on alcohol. So to be quite honest, they're relying on you to come to buy the alcohol, so you buy other things. But what we need to do is we need to put the taxes up higher on those. So if you are going to buy alcohol from the supermarket, you're going to be paying at a higher premium. But we need to bring those prices down into the anyone that's doing an on license, not an off license. So you have to consume on the premises. We need to take the tax away from that. We need the governments to turn around and say, that's duty free. You do not have to pay any tax on alcohol. So when you're buying it, they can get it at cost from the suppliers and bring those prices back right down. So I'm going to give you some, because this will also help, because I don't think people would consume as much on a night out as they would from drinking at home. Generally don't. Yes, they may get drunk, but they're not going to be drinking as much as they would consume in their home life. This will have a benefit for health services as well. But let's talk about prices. So might as well talk about price of the pint. So I'm going to use 1995. So 30 years ago, the average price of a pint, and these are all averages, so it can go up and a little bit up and a little bit down, but the average price for a pint in 1995 was £1.68, and the average price in 2025 is £5.17, which is a 207% increase. So there's my maths working out there. So that's huge. I mean, 207% increase in the price of a pint in a pub. How can any industry increase? Now, the only way that would be okay is if your cost of living, so if your personal wages had gone up by amount. So let's talk about that. So the average wage increase. In 1995, the average wages was £19,000. It's now 38,000 in 2025. I still know loads of people that don't earn £35,000. Now that's only a 100% increase. So take that into consideration. Your earnings have only gone up by 100%. Not taking into inflation costs. This is just genuine prices, and then obviously you can work out inflations, etc., about what your actual earnings are, which is not going to look great after this. But for a price of a pint to go up by 207% versus only 100% in earnings, no wonder we cannot afford to go out, if that is what's going on. Now, if you're talking about tickets, so we're going to talk about expensive. This is like your bigger ticket. These are your big bands. So Metallica, I'm going to use Metallica. So in 1995, they were out doing their, I think it was Cunning Stunts tour. So they were very big at this time. They're off the back of the Black Album. They're out doing the Load Era. In 1995, you could get a ticket concert. A price for a ticket to go see them was £35 on average. Again, different tiers. Nowadays, there's a lot more tiers. Back then, there was less tiers. It was £35. In 2025, surprisingly, I thought it'd be more than this, but surprisingly for them, it was £110 is the average, but they do have packages that go massively up. But that is a 214% increase. That's even more than the alcohol. So this is big bands, and we're seeing this in big bands. If you look at bands like Oasis, Linkin Park, the prices for those tickets were even bigger. There was a massive swing. But people don't seem to complain about those. They go, well, that's just, if I want to go see Metallica, £110, that's it. Yes, no worries, I can do that. And I'll pay £5, £8, and at these venues, this is like £7, £8 a pint, easy. Some place I've seen over £10 a pint, which is ridiculous. Now, local gigs. To go and see a local band, like a combination of 3 or 4 local bands in 1995, cost you on average £5. £5 only. Remember I said Metallica was 35, so £5, not bad, good deal. In 2025, the average is only £7. That's a 40% increase. Now I've just said Metallica, 214% increase. Beer, 207%. Local band promoter gigs are only pushed their prices up by 40%, and the common feeling is too expensive. No, you got to bring your prices down. You got to make them like £3 entry or free entry to get people to come watch your bands. That's insane. How can anyone run a free entry unless it's the venue just trying to get you in? And even then, they've got to then sell a lot of alcohol, which is already at 207% increased. It's insane. So what's inflation done? We need to consider inflation in this. And again, it does vary by country, but generally this is just to give you an idea. So between 1995 and 2025, our inflation has increased by 102%, which is obviously a lot. It's for everything to have gone up by 102%, so everything's more than double what it was 30 years ago. But we're already seeing that our inflation's gone by 102, average wage has gone up by 100, so we're already behind inflation. We are behind inflation. Doesn't matter what the government says, we are behind inflation. But everything of our cost of living's gone up far too much. So how do we manage that? There are things we need to do. Yes, we can bring the cost of going out down. So to help the smaller venues, because that's where the big challenge is. The big venues, you're always going to have you're not always going to have them because they're getting older, but your Iron Maidens, your Metallicas, and people, and Judas Priest, etc. And people will pay more money to go and watch them. But what can we do to encourage people to come out and spend nights out at local venues to go and watch it? Because the way it is going with the prices of alcohol consumption going up, the rates, because for venues, the rates are astronomical. As a promoter, I don't have to worry about any of those cost factors, but my struggle is to get my event to stand out from everyone else's. That's very difficult because you can pay for ad promotion, you can do all of this extra work, and you're just not getting out in front of anyone. People won't see your ads, there's too many bands. Everyone's trying to go, well, let's try and put an event on. Let's try and put some gigs on. We have an event tonight at the Black Prince in Northampton, but it's really been a struggle because we've got in the local area within Northamptonshire, we've got some big rock metal-y events going on. We've got Northampton Rocks going on in the Wellingborough area. We've got Twin Fest going on all around Northampton. So we've got all these venues, and they're packing out, and they've done great pricing as well. They've got all these bands playing, and they're actually pretty cheap, so that makes it really challenging. We have a rule generally of £2.50 a band, it works out as. So if you've got 4 bands on a bill, it's an average of £10. Now that may put us a little bit pricier, but we think you can't really devalue the bands any more than that, because that's what you're doing by doing that as a promotion, saying this band's not worth £2.50. After all the work these bands put into, you can't say it's worth it, and that's less than half what you pay for a pint of beer. You're saying a band is less than half a pint's worth. Not a great look, is it? So that's my thought of why I think the live music scene is dying. We've got more to do. Could we go back to physical media? There is a growth in physical media for things like CD sales, and that can only be a good thing. I do understand there's always going to be a market for digital download, but should that be chargeable? Can we ever get away? Is there any way of breaking the streaming market? I don't think that's a genie you can't put back in the bottle. That's the toothpaste you can't get back in the tube. There's got to be more. We've got to make it more chargeable. We've got to make it more expensive for people, so that the money that bands make on it and the revenue that they're making makes a lot more sense. People always say, Dave, there's no point banging on about it ain't going to change. Well, whilst everyone keeps saying it ain't going to change, but the same people that complain and say it ain't going to change are going to basically tell me about how AI is destroying the world. So streaming platforms, unfortunately, AI is just another thing that's coming down that we're going to have to accept is coming in, and AI is nowhere near what it needs to be realistic. You can always tell when something's AI. But we've seen it with the streaming platform. We've seen an AI band get millions of plays on Spotify and earn revenue, and it's not even real. It's all been generated by AI. That's where we are in this world. We've got to make a stand. We've got to do something to get back people into small venues, watching real live bands, enjoying themselves, put the cost of living where it needs to be, put the charges where we need them to be. So if you want to drink at home and get drunk and make it really expensive to do that, get people out of the house, keep the prices at a reasonable rate. Can we get it back to like £2.50 a pint? That's where we're aiming for. If we can do it for a can, if we can make it that cheap to be in bottles in there, we can do better in the venue. We can do more for music venues to get their rates lower, where they are reliant on people coming to the door. They're not restaurants, they're not like that. We need to do more for live music venues to help bring people back out, because it's not just the music venue that's suffering, it's the live music industry. And I dread to know what it's going to look like in another 30 years time if I'm still here. Christ knows what the music industry is going to look like, but I hope something changes and makes it better. But let me know what you think about the whole situation with the live music industry. Is it dying, or is there salvation in the future? What else do you recommend we could do as a society to improve live music? And what about the points that I've raised? Is there anything that could be done about those? Thank you very much for watching. See you on another video sometime very soon. Take care.